You hit Update on your brand new Samsung laptop and watch your C drive disappear. Your $1,500 machine turns to scrap, not because of a hacker, not because of a virus, but because of a routine security update from Microsoft. And the worst part? Bill Gates, the man who literally built Windows, saw this coming. He wrote it down in a memo 23 years ago. Microsoft filed it away and forgot it existed. Now in 2026, everything he warned about is happening at once. And Samsung, one of the biggest names in consumer electronics, just made a move that is shaking Microsoft to its core. At CES 2026, while every other major manufacturer was still doubling down on Windows on ARM, Samsung quietly walked away. No press conference, no announcement, no statement. They just left. Microsoft had spent years promising that ARM-based Windows laptops would be the future. Thinner designs, all-day battery life, always connected. The pitch sounded great. The product was a disaster. Driver support was broken. App compatibility was a daily nightmare. Enterprise software refused to cooperate. Developers ignored the platform completely. Samsung watched all of it play out and made the call. When a company that size exits an ecosystem without even making a scene about it, that silence is the loudest signal in the industry. Then came March 2026 and Microsoft handed Samsung the most embarrassing public moment of the year. A small pre-installed app called Galaxy Connect, designed simply to link your Galaxy Book to your phone, had leftover data from previous versions buried deep inside the system. When Microsoft pushed their February security update KB5077181, Windows flagged that buried data as a threat and locked users out of their own C drive. Thousands of people woke up and couldn't open their own files. Microsoft's official fix? Log in as administrator, manually change ownership of every single file on the drive, run a batch file, then restart. That is not a patch. That is emergency surgery on a system that was supposed to be the most trusted computing platform on the planet. Laptops retailing between $1,200 and $1,800, bought by students with deadlines, professionals with years of work stored on those drives, all of it locked away. Not because they did anything wrong. Because of one line of code they didn't even know existed on their own device. Corporate damage was on another level entirely. IT managers arrived at work to find entire floors frozen on the same access-denied screen. Industry estimates put the average cost of IT downtime at $5,600 per minute for large enterprises. Some offices were down for 2 to 3 full days. And this is where the structural problem becomes impossible to ignore. Samsung built the hardware. Samsung sold the hardware. But Samsung has zero control over Microsoft's update mechanism. One broken update and Samsung's brand takes the damage for a problem rooted entirely inside Microsoft's system. That is the Windows OEM relationship in its rawest form, and it has never been exposed this clearly in a single incident. But the Galaxy Connect disaster didn't happen in isolation. It landed inside a year where Microsoft's relationship with its users collapsed faster than at any point in company history. Microsoft made Copilot mandatory. Every new Windows 11 laptop now requires a dedicated Copilot key on the keyboard just to receive AI PC certification. Background Copilot processes ran continuously, consuming memory and CPU on hardware that already had higher requirements than its predecessor. Windows Recall, a feature that took continuous screenshots of everything you did on your screen so AI could search your activity, was announced, triggered a privacy backlash within days, was pulled, redesigned, and re-released as an opt-in beta that still never recovered its reputation. The term microslop went viral globally. Pavan Divuluri, Windows president, posted publicly about plans to turn Windows into an agentic OS in November 2025, and the replies were so negative he disabled comments entirely. A product leader turning off public comments on an official announcement is not a communication strategy. It is a retreat. Back in 2002, Bill Gates sat down and wrote a memo called Trustworthy Computing and sent it to every single Microsoft employee. In it, he warned his own company that pushing system-level updates without proper coordination with hardware manufacturers would eventually create failures so severe they would destroy user trust permanently. Microsoft filed it away. 23 years later, that is exactly what happened on Galaxy Book laptops across the world. The internet noticed immediately. Forums exploded with threads titled, "Gates predicted this exact disaster." A man who hasn't worked at Microsoft in nearly 2 decades understanding its update infrastructure better than the team currently running it. Meanwhile, the Linux migration is not a theory anymore. It is a measurable event. Microsoft ended mainstream security support for Windows 10 on October 14, 2025. The machines that couldn't meet Windows 11's hardware requirements numbered in the hundreds of millions globally. Zorin OS 18 recorded 6-figure downloads in its opening window, the majority coming directly from Windows systems. StatCounter tracked Linux desktop share at roughly 5% in the US by mid-2025. Google Trends data from February 2026 shows searches for "how to install Linux" at an all-time high globally, running approximately 5 times the volume of the preceding month. That is not curiosity. That is a migration event in progress. And Samsung is already preparing for that world. A community developer named Joshua Giesham built a driver called Samsung Galaxy Book specifically to unlock hardware-level features on Galaxy Books running Linux: keyboard backlight controls, battery charge management, performance profiles. Features that were Windows only for years. Samsung didn't build this. Samsung didn't fund it. But Samsung also hasn't stopped it. When the community starts building serious Linux infrastructure for your hardware and the manufacturer stays completely out of the way, you are watching a platform migration begin before it has been officially announced. Every Windows license costs Samsung money. Every Windows update cycle creates compatibility work. Every Windows-specific failure generates Samsung support tickets for a problem Samsung cannot control. Linux eliminates all of it. Bill Gates built an empire on one assumption, that no alternative to Windows could ever reach the critical mass needed to threaten its dominance. That assumption held for 30 years because it was mostly true for 30 years. The conditions that made it true are gone. Samsung stepping away from Windows ARM, tolerating community Linux driver development on Galaxy Book hardware, and watching Galaxy Connect destroy user trust without any ability to prevent it. That is not a company that believes the old assumptions still hold. The question is not whether Samsung's move is significant. The question is whether Microsoft has any answer left that is big enough to stop what is already in motion. Drop a comment below. Have you already switched to Linux? And if you haven't, after everything you just heard, what are you still waiting for? 87 million people have abandoned Windows for Linux Mint. Not gradually. Not quietly. In 6 months. That number was 4 million back in September 2025. By March 2026, it hit 87 million. That is a 22 times increase. And it is still accelerating. This is not a tech story. This is the largest user revolt in the history of personal computing, and Microsoft has no answer for it. To understand what happened, you need to understand what Windows 11 did to people. In January 2026, Microsoft pushed Update KB 50741109 to every Windows 11 machine on the planet. Within days, computers could not boot. Black screens of death. File Explorer broken. Outlook crashing. Microsoft released 2 emergency patches. Neither fixed the boot issue. Their official solution was to tell users to manually uninstall the update themselves. A mandatory security update that destroyed computers, and the fix was to undo it. Then February came. Update KB 5SM7181 killed audio on gaming laptop. NVIDIA GPU systems went unstable. Some users had to completely wipe their SSD and reinstall everything. Then March. Update KB 5079473 broke Microsoft account sign-ins. Users could not open Teams, could not access OneDrive, could not log into the very services Microsoft had spent years forcing them to depend on. 3 consecutive months, 3 consecutive disasters, and every single one caused by Microsoft's own updates that users had zero ability to refuse. But the update failures were not even the main trigger. A post on Reddit got 340,000 upvote. A user was 11 hours into a 12-hour, 4K video render. Windows 11 decided it was update time. The machine restarted. 11 hours of work gone. He installed Linux Mint that night. The comments filled with thousands of identical stories. Medical professionals losing patient data. Students losing thesis work. Freelancers losing billable hours. All because Windows decides when your computer restarts regardless of what you are doing. Then there was Copilot. One software developer wrote that he had disabled it 9 times through 9 different settings menus. Every update re-enabled it. He switched to Linux and said his productivity doubled overnight. Then came the Microsoft account requirement. One father bought a laptop for his 13-year-old daughter. Windows refused to let him set it up without creating a Microsoft account for her. He spent 4 hours looking for workarounds. Every method had been patched. He returned the laptop. That is the moment millions of ordinary people started Googling alternatives. The alternative they found was Linux Mint. In September 2025, Linux Mint recorded 380,000 downloads. By October, it was 1.2 million. November, 3.8 million. December, 8.4 million. January 2026, 14.7 million. February, 18.3 million. Total across those 6 months, 46.8 million download. For comparison, Ubuntu, the largest Linux distribution on the planet, recorded 17.3 million downloads across the entire year of 2025. Linux Mint beat that in a single month. Their servers physically crashed in January from the traffic volume. Emergency CDN capacity had to be added overnight. The reason people chose Linux Mint specifically and not Ubuntu or Fedora is the Cinnamon desktop. It is a deliberate, precise copy of Windows 7. Start menu in the bottom left. Classic application list. Taskbar across the bottom. System tray in the bottom right. Alt plus tab switching that works identically. Windows 7 had a 67% user satisfaction rating. Windows 11 sits at 28%. Linux Mint gave people the Windows that Microsoft refused to give them. First-time users report, side by side, that screenshots of Windows 7 and Linux Mint are nearly indistinguishable. The learning curve is 0. You click the bottom left. The menu opens. You click your app. It launches. Exactly like Windows 7. That eliminated the single biggest barrier to switching. Then there is the performance. Thomas Bradley, a high school teacher in Ohio, ran a 2019 Dell laptop with an Intel i5 and 8 GB RAM on Windows 11. Boot time, 48 seconds. LibreOffice opening, 7 seconds. RAM usage at idle, 35%. He installed Linux Mint on the same machine. Boot time, 9 seconds. LibreOffice, 1.4 seconds. RAM at idle, 11%. Same hardware, 3 times faster. He deleted Windows that weekend. Real people are making permanent decisions. Jennifer Morrison, a small business owner in Ohio, said she cried with joy when she installed Linux Mint because it was exactly the Windows 7 she had used for years. Marcus Jiang, an IT administrator in Singapore, switched 340 corporate computers to Linux Mint over 3 weeks. Support tickets dropped by 81%. Sarah O'Connor, a 71-year-old retiree in Ireland, installed it after her grandson showed her how. She said Microsoft made computing feel impossible. Linux Mint made it feel normal again. Priya Sharma, a teacher in India, had 180 school computers that Windows 11 refused to run on due to missing TPM 2.0 chip. Microsoft's suggestion was to buy new hardware at a cost her school could never afford. Linux Mint installed on all 180 machines. Students did not notice the difference. At the corporate scale, Deutsche Telekom migrated 60,000 workstations and publicly reported saving $89 million. And Satya Nadella's response to all of this? On the February 2026 earnings call, an analyst asked him directly about Linux Mint's 87 million users. His answer was essentially, users who want something different have options. Translation: Microsoft is accepting the defections. In his annual Outlook post, Nadella mentioned AI 14 times. He mentioned Windows quality 0 times. The screen behind Bill Gates lights up in front of 2,800 global leaders at the World Economic Forum, February 2026. He is mid-sentence, talking about how technology empowers people when a notification appears. A Windows 11 restart countdown begins ticking down in real time on a giant projection screen. He pauses, tries to dismiss it, clicks once, twice, nothing happens. The clock keeps moving. The co-founder of Microsoft, the man who built Windows, stands there watching his own operating system ignore him. The room goes quiet. Within hours, the clip hits 47 million views. By the weekend, it crosses 120 million. This was not a glitch. This was exactly how Windows 11 is designed to behave. The same week that moment went viral, something else happened quietly in the background. A small Linux distribution called Zorin OS crossed 1 million new users in 90 days. No marketing campaign. No billion-dollar push. Just people leaving Windows and choosing something else. These two events look unrelated, but they are the same story. One shows what users are experiencing. The other shows what they are doing about it. By early 2026, Microsoft's hardware rules had already locked out an estimated 240 million PCs from upgrading due to TPM 2.0 requirement. These were not broken machines. Not slow machines. Just incompatible because Microsoft said so. At the same time, Windows 11 tightened control with mandatory Microsoft accounts, pushed deeper system integration of cloud services, and introduced features like continuous background capture tied to AI tools. Add to that ads appearing in core system areas and forced update cycles, and users started asking a simple question: why does my own computer feel like it belongs to someone else? Then came the deadline. October 14, 2025. End of support for Windows 10. Hundreds of millions of users were left with three choices: buy new hardware, accept Windows 11, or find an alternative. For a long time, that third option barely existed for normal users. Linux was seen as complicated, unfamiliar, risky. That is where Artyom Zorin and Kirill Zorin come in. Back in 2008, in a small apartment in Dublin, they started a project for a simple reason. Their family could not use Linux comfortably. So they built something different. An operating system that looked and felt like Windows, not inspired by it, not loosely similar, almost identical in layout. Taskbar at the bottom. Start button in the left corner. File system that feels familiar. The insight was simple but powerful. Switching is not about technical difficulty, it is about comfort. If users recognize what they see, they do not panic. That decision became critical years later. When users opened Zorin OS, they did not feel lost. They felt at home instantly. No learning curve. No confusion. That is why the viral moment that triggered the wave mattered so much. A Reddit post from Pacific Northwest Dave in October 2025 described installing Zorin on a 2016 Dell Optiplex, 8GB RAM, Intel i5-6500. His system could not upgrade to Windows 11. He tried Zorin once. Installation took 18 minutes. Boot time dropped from 41 seconds to 9 seconds. Everything worked. Printer, files, drives, no extra setup. The post hit 94,000 upvotes and over 3,400 comments. One comment alone reached 8,700 likes saying, "I have been scared to switch for 15 years. Installed Zorin yesterday. I have not Googled a single thing. Everything just makes sense." That is the moment the perception broke. Linux was no longer complicated. It was easier. Within weeks, Zorin OS traffic jumped 890%. Their servers crashed 3 times in January 2026 from download demand. By their own reporting, they hit 1 million new active users in Q4 2025 and reached around 3.2 million active users by February 2026. For a project that had roughly 200,000 users in 2022, that is explosive growth. The more surprising detail is who switched. 43% of new users were over 50. This is the group assumed to never leave Windows. People who do not experiment. People who avoid change. Yet they moved anyway. Because staying became harder than switching. A 63-year-old retired teacher described it simply. "It looks like my old computer, everything is where I expect, I do not think about the system anymore." That is the key difference. Windows demands attention. Zorin disappears. Small businesses followed the same logic. Replacing hardware for Windows 11 costs between $800 and $1,200 per device. For a 20-computer office, that is $16,000 to $24,000. Installing Zorin costs nothing except setup time. One IT consultant reported migrating 190 systems since September 2025, with support requests dropping by 70% after the switch. Less interruptions, fewer updates breaking workflows, fewer complaints. At the same time, global pressure on Microsoft increased. Security concerns around integrated AI access to sensitive data pushed organizations to reassess. Government-level discussions about reducing dependency on a single vendor accelerated. Large-scale contracts in Europe began shifting toward open-source solutions, and multiple countries initiated plans to reduce reliance on Windows systems in public infrastructure. These are not small signals. These are structural shifts. The contrast between the two systems became obvious through user experience. On one side, Windows 11 with forced updates, background processes, account requirements, and increasing system-level advertising. On the other side, Zorin OS offering fast boot times under 15 seconds,